Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of Community Environment and Partnerships. We've got a bit of an echo tonight. Is it okay where you are? Because it's sort of feeding back at me. All right, okay. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening, so if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exit is located at the rear of this room. Go down the stairs and meet in the War Memorial Park. The meeting is being webcast live on the internet, and the webcast will also be published to YouTube after the meeting. And it is working, and mobile phones can all members and the public switch their phones off or turn them to silent. Thank you. Apologies for absence and substitution. We have an apology from Councillor Mark Taylor, who's been replaced by Councillor Colin Regan. So welcome. Any declarations of interest? No. There are no urgent matters. Minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of December. Unless anyone's got any queries on the accuracy, I will sign those at the end of the meeting as correct. Okay, good. Recommendation from Council. This is the motion about CSPOs. And if you've looked at the end of your agenda, you'll see that we've penciled it in for discussion on the 19th of June. We need to get a report from officers on all these various points in the motions. There won't be time to do that and get it through senior management for the March meeting, so the June meeting's the earliest meeting we can do that. So if you're content, we will ask officers to do us a report on all the items in the motion in time for our June meeting. Is that okay? Good. Which brings us to the main item this evening, which is our update and presentation from Serco. So welcome to, I think it's Jason, who's the regional director, and your colleague from Comms, and John, and a different officer who I've not met, Maria. Right, I couldn't read my own handwriting, so that was because we're used to, and we have a visiting.
No, sorry, Rob. Can I bring back a second? I think Councillor Paul Harvey sent a request to Democratic Services.
Okay, that hasn't reached me. Yeah. Democratic Services are checking the emails. Yeah, we'll pick it up when we get to the forward programme. That's good thinking. Right. So into Serco. So we've got a presentation. You should have a paper copy in front of you. We're going to run through the whole of the presentation without interruptions, because that will be the simplest way of doing it. Then I will invite the visiting speakers to speak. I think you prefer to speak after the presentation rather than before it, and then I'll throw it open to a mixture of questions and discussion. It's not the sort of topic where we need to keep the two separate. So John, over to you to get things started, please.
Okay, thank you. Well, as members may remember, last time we came to this committee back in September, we presented a report on what the council was planning to do to increase its recycling rate and how we were going to manage bring banks in the future. And when we last attended the meeting, it was agreed that we would ask Serco to come back to do a presentation on the work that they're doing with implementation of the contract in September. We felt it was rather early to be doing that, so this is the purpose of tonight's presentation. So I'm here just to give an introduction, and then I'm going to pass across to Jason, who we've already heard is the regional director from Serco, and then we're going to pass on to Helen, who's going to tell us about the excellent work she's doing working in partnership with Basingstoke Council and Hart District Council to try and promote and working on the communications, promote and encourage more recycling across both areas. I think Maria's going to chip in with one or two slides as we go through. Maria works in the Joint Waste Client Team, so she's one of the officers from Hart District Council. As we heard, we'd like to take questions at the end, and we're aiming for the presentation to last about 30 minutes, which hopefully we'll wrap it up in about 30 minutes. So it's just to remind you, so we've got a new contract, started on the 1st of October, and it will run, it's an 8-year contract, will run to October 2026, so it's a big commitment, it's a long-running contract. The option at the end of that period is for the contract to be extended for a further 8 years. So if all goes well, that's what we're hoping will happen. It's a long-term commitment we've got with Serco. We're very much in enjoying working with them and looking forward to working with them in the future. It's a big contract, as far as certainly as Basingstoke's concerned, and Hart. Total value is 44 million, 5.5 million per annum across both authorities. We serve 115,000 properties across both districts as a joint contract, and it makes 42,000 collections a day, which when you think about it, it sounds quite amazing, but when you work out that's the number of glass bins and various bins that are emptied, garden waste, etc., it's a big commitment. The issue with it, of course, is it has a big impact on the residents in both areas. When you're making 42,000 collections, we're always going to get issues associated with that. We're pleased to be working with Serco. We've taken on this contract and we're trying to take it forward in a much more collaborative way, and that's one of the reasons we've got Serco here tonight, something we haven't done before, having a contractor coming in and talking to members, but we were very much working together with them on delivering this service. And we promote that through the partnership board. We've got a meeting next week, and then behind that we've also got our own joint governance group, which is where Basingstoke and Hart can talk about management of the contract, and then the joint waste client team based at Hart who actually manage the contract. So looking at the new contracts is going forward. Obviously it's still early days, as I've indicated. We have got a long commitment here, and there's work that needs to be done, and Jason's going to be telling you something about that as we go on. But we're looking forward to, we've got enhanced KPIs. We've enhanced the specification from the old contract, which will be looking at improved customer service, which we're delivering through the implementation of a new IT software system, which again links through both councils and to Serco, which will help us provide real-time information and customer information. The previous specification from the previous contract has also been extended to now include, as well as the ordinary waste collections, Serco undertake bulky waste and clinical waste collections, which were previously undertaken in-house. And they also manage the bring sites. Again, that was undertaken by separate contractors, and we will very much believe, whilst that work is still in progress, that will provide a much enhanced service going forward. So that gives you a bit of background to the contract. I'm now going to pass over to Jason, who's going to tell you a bit more about the work they're doing.
Hi everybody. Hi. So my name's Jason Kinsella. I'm going to sort of give a brief update in terms of how the mobilisation went and some of the key features of this new service, this new contract. I said that I've been involved in the mobilisation from post-award along with my colleague Helen, and I've seen the transition through from mobilisation and through the transition period. The mobilisation went extremely well. All staff 2P'd from the previous contractor, apart from the contract manager, but we were fortunate enough to appoint a new manager within the first couple of weeks of the contract. We carried out quite a lot of training before the contract commenced with the staff. We paid for their time over the weekends leading up to go live. So we kind of got a lot of the training out of the way, including driver training. So when we started on day one, we could just carry on a seamless transfer. As part of this contract, we've introduced 40 new vehicles across the contract. Our RCVs have the latest Euro 6 engines, as well as electric bin lifts, which is new from the previous contractor. We've also had quite a lot of comments about how quiet some of these vehicles are going down the road, and that's leading to the electric bin lifts. This is going to have a big impact on our carbon reduction targets. One of our safety initiatives is all of the RCVs have 360 cameras around. So this really does help through vehicle accidents to understand what the issues were, any confrontation with the public, etc. We've purchased for our management team and supervisory team. They have 100% electric vehicles. Again, that's going to play a major impact on our carbon reduction. We've also purchased 3 narrow access vehicles to deal with. Part of our through the bid stage, we identified quite a lot of difficult to reach areas. So we've purchased 3 narrow access RCV trucks to help with that part of the service. The Basingstoke depot in Wade Road is undergoing major redevelopment. We are in the process of building a brand new workshop facility to manage our fleet of vehicles. Work started on that in December, and we're looking at completion date of probably April this year. Following that, then we are looking at the office accommodation, and we've got a plan to replace those hopefully by the end of 2019. As we spoke earlier, we've introduced a new IT system called Whitespace. Some of the benefits of this is we have real-time data. So it has automatic generations of rounds for the crews. We're able to, in real time, assign work, change routes. For instance, if there's a severe breakdown, we're able to reallocate that crew's round to another round. And also, if there are any issues out there, we can see straight away on the dashboard on round progress. All the vehicles have got tracking systems, so we can actually see where the crews are. We also can direct crews if they're having difficulty finding particular properties. Further parts of the Whitespace system, the in-cab system, allows the drivers to carry out vehicle checks by using the tablet. This then keeps a record of all the defects they might report. The dashboard reporting is a really good tool, and the client team have also got access to this, so we can see real-time data in terms of round progress. If we are noticing any difficulties, we're able to contact staff through the in-cab device to find out what the issues are, and if, for instance, there's a blocked road, we can help and divert them round to come back to that road a bit later, or feed them information of potential traffic issues within the boroughs. We're also able to book work and send ad hoc work down to the devices in real time. So if there was an emergency job that needed doing, we can allocate that work straight away, or find the nearest crew to divert that work to. We're also able to build in additional functions like planned work, so seasonal work. So recently we had the collection of the Christmas trees. So that's a new part of the service, and we were able then to create a round and send that down to the relevant crews to collect the Christmas trees from the relevant sites. The customers as well, the residents, are also able to go online and look up the dates when properties and streets are going to be serviced. Able to raise requests through that system, missed collections, or book bulky or clinical collections through that system. As what John said earlier, there's some new services that come onto this contract, and that was the additional bulky collections and clinical collections, which we are doing, and that's been a seamless transfer, and the Bring sites. So as well as additional collections from the Bring sites, we're also responsible for the cleansing of the Bring sites. So we've taken over that responsibility, and one of the other new part to the contract is we have full responsibility of container management. So that's the responsibility of managing the stock, ordering the stock, and it includes repair bins. So what we're doing is, as well as, rather than giving out a new bin to a new resident every time, we will see if we can repair bins and keep a stock of repair bins for exchanges. So that's kind of it for me, really, just to give a brief overview. I'll pass you over to my colleague Helen. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, good evening. Firstly, just welcome to the Joint Partnership Communications team. There are members from Hart Council, Basingstoke Council, myself, and RAP. I've got a bit of a slide about RAP because I'm not sure how many people have heard about RAP. So, RAP is a charity that was established in the year 2000. It's funded by DEFRA and various parts of the government, both in the UK, Ireland, Wales and Scotland, and for the moment also has some EU funding. They've developed big campaigns such as the Recycle Now campaign in 2004 and the Love Food Hate Waste campaign in 2007. So very well established, working extensively with local authorities up and down the country, but also working with industry leaders, supermarkets such as Tesco's, Asda, Sainsbury's, manufacturers such as Unilever and Nestle. And what they're doing with these organisations is to try and reduce food and drink waste, as well as looking at packaging and trying to nudge people in the right direction to be using more recyclable packaging, more recycled products in their packaging. And another big campaign of theirs, in 2007 they worked on a labelling campaign. So they basically, instead of the sell by date, they encouraged and used the pressure to ask manufacturers to use a display by date. And then in 2017, they were then using their influence to change that to a best before date. So they've worked very hard with all of these partners to bring the best together that will help us reduce food waste and work get better packaging, more environmentally friendly packaging. So they're also experts in behavioural change in the waste and recycling industry. They've got tried and tested campaigns. They work across all sorts of demographics, so they have experience with working in areas where you have flats, where you have multicultural pockets of society. So they basically their experience over the years using things such as positive messaging and social norming. So, for example, social norming is around letting everybody believe that everyone around them is recycling. So if they're all recycling, then I should be recycling too. So it's less about the stick and more about the carrot, and using these positive messages to try and improve our recycling targets. Some of the work that we've already done with RAP, which I'm sure you've probably seen these already across the area, the panels that we now have got displaying the recycling messages, and this has been all created using RAP's knowledge, using your Basingstoke comms team, using the Hart comms team, and ourselves in Serco. And together we are working to create one consistent look and feel to all of our communications. So if you see something on a vehicle, if you see something on a leaflet, if you see something on a hanger, it should all look, feel the same, so that you get that consistency of messaging. Residents will benefit from that, so we're not chopping and changing. Other things that we've produced with RAP have been the recycling leaflet. We're working on hanger designs. We're working on stickers and signage for flats, which we'll come on to later. And we're developing a brand guide so that we're going to be able to be consistent through the 8 years of the contract, so that we, as RAP who are only working on campaigns with us this year move away from us, we are able to continue on throughout the life of the contract. And as well as using the work with RAP, your comms team here, led by Chrissy, have been doing a brilliant job of using more traditional methods such as social media, getting these messages out. You can see that we've been using the leaflet and Christmas dates, and everything sort of getting that whole look and feel. Also, the more traditional media, because not everybody is on the internet. So you've got your paper, you've got the Basingstoke and Dean newsletter. So we're using all of these channels to spread the recycling message across to all of your residents. And going to hand over to Maria to talk a bit more about white space.
Thanks, Helen. Yeah, as Jason previously mentioned, the IT solution that we're using across the contract is called Whitespace, and this enables crews to receive work and also report issues that they're having out on the ground. Communication-wise, this is an excellent tool for us that we've never had before in terms of being able to answer people's queries when they call us regarding any problems with their collections. So the crew can let us know if there's a road blockage and they think their bin's been missed, but actually we just haven't been able to get there yet. The contact centre now know that information so that when somebody calls they can say, well, actually they haven't got to you yet, maybe that we can then give them an update to say, okay, we should be with you before the end of the day. If we're not and it spills over into the next day for whatever reason, leave your bins out if the road continues to be blocked. More advantages are if people ring up because their recycling bin hasn't been collected. Maybe it's contaminated. The crew are able to take a photo, upload that in the cab, and then that's available then for the contact centre staff to view and say, well, actually, I'm looking at the picture here now. You know, you're mostly along the right lines. However, you put everything in carrier bags or something, so please can you ensure that all your items are loose for your next collection. So it just means that there's a lot more tied up information between the crew, the contact centre, and the staff behind the scenes, whether it be the recycling officers or Jason and his supervisors down at the office. So that's one excellent communication tool that we're quite happy about. It also means that we're able now to offer residents the opportunity to report a missed bin online. So they can go online, and providing it was a genuine missed bin, they'll then be able to report that, and a note will come back to say, thank you for reporting your missed bin, we will arrange for it to be collected. However, if the crew have reported that bin at that property as not being out for collection or it being contaminated, then a note will come back to say, unfortunately, we can't accept this request as a missed collection. Get in touch with us for more information. So it just means that everything for our customers is just a lot quicker, and there's a lot more information available to us to be able to give to them. And I think that's about it for Whitespace. Thank you. Moving on to our garden waste collection, as a lot of you will already know, as of next week, we start our enhanced service, which means that customers will be able to use a wheeled bin for garden waste. We're also moving to 50 weeks a year rather than the previous 44. So there's a lot more collections within the year. There's obviously a lot more container choice, and I'm pleased to say it's been really successful in that out of our 10,000 customers, we've already had 5,000 sign up for the new service, which is the most that we've had prior to starting a service, and 2,603 of those have ordered a bin. So we've got well over 50% of people opting to go for a wheeled bin for garden waste. And I definitely think for a lot of people it is a much easier solution for garden waste. We have an offer on until the end of March that the wheeled bin is at a reduced price, and obviously all of our existing customers have already been told that. We will in a couple of weeks start advertising it to the wider market for people to be able to come forward and make the most of that offer before it finishes. We just needed to make sure that our existing customers were well informed of what the new service was about first. As you can appreciate, delivering that many garden waste bins in a relatively short amount of time is quite tricky. So people have been given plenty of heads up. Oh, and we also have a hanger going out in the spring, which will also advertise to everybody across the borough who has a curbside collection of waste and recycling about the garden waste service if they don't already know about it. And just a recycling reminder, our whole focus at the moment around communications is just to give people more opportunity to see recycling information. So rather than sending out larger booklets sort of once every year, once every couple of years, we're sending out smaller pieces of information but much more frequently, which we're hoping, if you missed your hanger, well, in a few months you'll see another one, or you'll see something in Basingstoke and Dean today, or you'll receive a leaflet. So it's just about trying to make sure that everybody sees more concise messages rather than bulking together a lot of information into one booklet quite infrequently.
Thank you, Maria.
Maria,
so-
you need to switch your microphone off, please.
Thank you. Another campaign that is being planned for later in the year, again about recycling. So it's about trying to encourage people to recycle more glass. So we're looking at starting that campaign in the summer. We've already designed with wrap the panels on the vehicles. The leaflet, oh no, this is a hanger, isn't it? Sorry, the hanger is being developed at the moment. So we're hoping to sit down as a comms team to review that in the next week or so. From that, social media messages will also be developed, as well as the adverts or information for the Basingstoke and Dean Today and for your local papers. So it will, everything that we do forms part of a multi-channel campaign. So we're not just going with the with the panels or just going with the hanger. We're trying to just put the same simple message out through lots and lots of different channels every time we do a campaign. And that really leads me on to social media planning. So we will be tying in these planned campaigns. We've got we're working on a 12-month scheduler. So we'll be building in things like these campaigns around the glass and the garden waste, but we'll also be looking at how we can tie in with things like national days, national weeks. How can we tie recycling or reduction messages in with those, or reuse as well? And also we're going to take this opportunity to highlight some of the work that we're doing as in partnership over the year. So it could be something like as simple as, did you know your binman walks 9 miles every day? Or did you know that that we collected X tons of glass? Or thank you, since the campaign we have collected X amount tons more of glass. So it's about the thanking and all that's being built together at the moment in a 12-month scheduler. So moving on to the flats project, I'm just going to switch back to Maria.
So over the next couple of years, one of our major focuses will be our flats and our communal bin store areas. We are well aware that they need some attention. There's a lot of sort of older bins. There's bins that have been provided by developers. There's bins that have been provided by ourselves, some mixed signage. So our major focus is to look at all of our bin stores. And like Helen said, our aim is consistency. We want to ensure that everybody who lives in a flatted property has the opportunity to recycle everything that somebody in a household has the opportunity to recycle, and that those facilities are suitable and also clear. We want people to walk into a bin store and know exactly where to put their rubbish, where to put their recycling, and what to recycle. I think there's a lot of abuse of bin stores. I think some of that is laziness. I think some of that is miscommunication from our part, and I think if we make sure that the information is clear, the signages are clear, the leaflets are clear, that we then know that we've given our best opportunity to ensure that people can recycle. We've tried different methods. On some larger developments, we have recycling only bin stores, and only if a resident contacts us and requests a key or a code for that bin store do they then have the access. Everybody has the opportunity to access, but it's only for people who actively want to recycle, and that's worked quite well. But obviously a lot of developments, we don't have the opportunity to have lots of different bin stores, so it's about looking at each individual set of flats and seeing what we can do to make things better. RAP have been doing some excellent work in Hackney with their bin stores and their flats, and everybody across the country has the same problems with communal areas. You know, it's not unique to Basingstoke, and in London they don't have any different problems to us, so we're looking to them and the signage that they've developed and looking at what they've done that works and maybe hasn't worked, and the communications they've done around that, and we're hoping to do something very similar. We have over 800 communal bin areas in Basingstoke, so it's a huge piece of work. It is going to take a couple of years, and a lot of communications with housing associations and all of that kind of thing to make sure that we can get the signage up and the refurbishment done that needs to be done. Don't be mistaken, some areas are working wonderfully and there's not a huge amount to do. Other areas we're not so lucky with and do require a lot of attention.
Oh, sorry, I think can I just do this slide first? Apologies, I've gone out of sync, apologies. So looking at beyond the flats project, looking at what we can do in years 2 to 3 to improve the recycling rate. In our bid, we've committed to bring on board an apprentice on this in the back office as a marketing stroke comms apprentice. We've had big discussions behind the scenes to try and work out when would be the best time to bring this apprentice on board, and that would be most beneficial to yourselves as an authority, but also to the apprentice, so that they're actually getting something out of it. This isn't about sending someone out to just pop a few leaflets through the door. So we feel that in years 2 to 3 of the contract, we're going to have enough data from white space to be able to use heat maps, draw information out to find out where we have the problems most with things like contamination or non-participation in particular schemes. So if we have an area that perhaps isn't recycling glass, then we can use mosaic profiling, looking at the demographics of those residents to try and work out the best way of communicating. Some people prefer face-to-face, some prefer a knock on a leaflet through the door, some would prefer to just see something on social media. So we would be using the apprentice to actually help look at the demographic data and then help develop the appropriate comms in the brand style to communicate with those customers, and this would be done on a round by round basis. So it's I think we all feel that would be a really nice, juicy project that would give the apprentice some really valuable skills at the end of a whole range of skills after the 12 months. So apologies, I'm going to go backwards now. And the customer satisfaction survey is something that we will also be introducing as part of our contract. So we've agreed the questionnaire, and I just really wanted to reassure everybody that our surveys are conducted by an independent research partner. We've worked with them since 2003. We have gone to the marketplace to check value for money and various other that we are actually getting the best deal we do that every 3 or 4 years. Calls are made are random. It's done through something called random digit dialing. So we have the 01256 telephone code, and then a computer generates the remaining digits. It's then screened to make sure that 01256 is Basingstoke, not, for example, Hook or Odium, which have the same codes but different first 2 digits. And then also the resident is asked at the start of the survey, is Basingstoke Council who you pay your council tax to? And they are also GDPR compliant, etc. And these surveys will be a regular pulse check as well as to how we're doing. They're going to be quarterly surveys, so they're going to be, how are we doing, and it's going to give us some good benchmarking data as the contract develops. And it's also going to give us some good trend data as the contract develops. And because we run these across various contracts, as we get 2 to 3 years into the contract, it's going to give you some good benchmarking data against other local authorities, and they have already signed up to agree to share their data with any of our customers who, as long as it's on a reciprocal agreement. It wouldn't be to the depth of every question, but it's more the trend data. And really, onto the last side is really what can you do to help? Because we are all in this together. If you could let us know where we could perhaps put leaflets in your wards. Is there anywhere we could put a glass collection recycling point in your box? Sorry, I got confused there. A glass box recycling point in your ward. So, for example, Christmas, when people want to recycle more glass, sometimes we can't get the boxes out quickly enough. Do you have a parish office or an area that people could come and collect the boxes from to speed up the process? The intention is to also include some recycling information with those if there's any available. Can we give you any information so that you can share it? We're more than happy to, if you need some support and guidance, we're more than happy to spend some time with you. And really, can you please keep spreading the message? Anyone that you speak to, residents, schools, brownies, adult groups, anyone, and we're more than happy to support you with information for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There was a lot in that. As I said, we'll involve the visitors first before we let councillors. So, do we have Claire Isbester with us tonight? If so, if you'd like to come forward. Right. Have you been to one of these committees before? No, I haven't. Okay, well, welcome. Have a seat. Strictly, you get 2 minutes, and the little red light will come on in front of you when you've had your 2 minutes. But unless you're waffling on, you won't. I will let you go over your 2 minutes. Okay, so so don't worry about it too much. And you need to press the big button in front of you, so your green light will probably come on. Yeah, no, that'll be all right. You can talk over me. So you have your 2 minutes.
Thank you. I've been prompted to come and speak to you tonight by the parlous state of the bin collection in Whitchurch, and because we're sick of being fobbed off when we complain that we're just making a comment about the service delivery, and because we think you've got the wrong contract. I'm going to quote from your sustainability policy. The council will support the development of a more sustainable community through its own work and in partnership with others by, among other things, enabling waste to be minimised, reused and recycled, promoting the sensitive disposal of what remains. And in your climate local commitment, you say, we'll set locally owned and determined commitments and actions to reduce carbon emissions, and will regularly refresh our commitments and actions to ensure they're current and continue to reflect local priorities. So I invite you to refresh your commitments and actions on recycling in order to meet your aims relating to waste and to carbon emissions. Although around 85% of the waste in our bins can be recycled, and with changes in the legislation that proportion will increase, Here, most is incinerated. But electricity-only incinerators like the one at Chinham emit 33% more carbon dioxide than gas power stations per unit of energy. And improvements in gas technology mean that by 2020, that's next year, they will emit 78% more. That's not sensitive disposal of what remains, and more of what remains could be recycled. And Councillor Eachus agrees. In April 2017, she told the Basingstoke Gazette, as part of our tender process, we're looking at options for the future to increase recycling levels. The Department of the Environment's got a new strategy which will require local authorities to take action, and this council's at the back of the field. Cambridge or Bath or Bristol or Gloucestershire or Essex or rural Pembrokeshire, for goodness sake, all already have weekly collections of food waste, and all of them already collect many more items for recycling. It's easy for residents because everything's collected from the doorstep. In Basingstoke and Dean, it's all just too complicated with too many exceptions for all but the most committed who want to get a key to that bin. In Whitchurch, we've started a self-help group to enable us to reduce waste. But without the support of our council, we cannot sustainably dispose of the waste we can't avoid unless we take it with us when we go and visit friends in a better authority. So how do you envisage improving the refuse collection service so that it genuinely collects waste in a timely and efficient manner, rather than lumping waste in with perfectly good recyclable and compostable material? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm sure someone would like to respond, and then you might be allowed a very quick follow-up question. I don't know who's going to want to respond. Councillor Regis, who's our portfolio head, got a mention in that. I don't know whether you want to comment, or do you want to leave it to...
Do you want me to come in?
Yeah, right, okay. We'll let John go first.
Okay, thanks very much. First thing I'd say is I'm sure we'd love to work with you, because that's exactly, we're all here, we're all working towards the same aim. First point I'd like to clarify, though, is the contract we're here talking about tonight is the waste collection contract, which is managed by Basingstoke and Dean and Hart, a joint contract. Hampshire County Council are the disposal authority, and they manage the disposal of the waste. Now, we do that in a way, so the way we collect our waste and organise our recycling is specified by them. And we do that across Hampshire, which actually is quite unique for a lot of county authorities. Most authorities, each district does it in different ways, but we all work in the same way. And the main driver in Hampshire is to do it in a sustainable way. So all the material that we recycle, we know are going to sustainable markets. It doesn't mean we've got it right, but it does mean that we're all trying to work in the same direction. It's not quite as straightforward as some people might think. We are in the process, and we're aware of the new government legislation that's come out. We're in the process of working with Hampshire County Council and all the other districts to look at how we might improve the recycling and look at a broader range of recycling and possibly change it. The problem we have is with the new legislation coming in, we're already anticipating the waste we currently manage and deal with is going to change in the coming years. As you know, the government are looking to reduce the amount of plastics that's actually comes into our waste stream. So I think the thing is to say we are aware of all the issues, and we probably agree with you. There's a lot more we would like to do. We are constrained in quite a lot of ways. The infrastructure, particularly that Hampshire has, it is ahead of a lot of authorities. We landfill literally, or very, very, very little. Most of it goes to incineration and energy recovery, but to change that is a long-term process. We are looking at that and looking at changing the recycling infrastructure and what other materials we might want to collect. But it is probably a long-term plan we're working on.
Anyone else want to comment?
Yeah, I think I would just like to, on top of that, say that, but with Serco, the whole point of getting them on board and the whole point of this contract and what Maria and Helen have just been saying is that they're working with RAP. We are doing work to encourage recycling, more consistent messaging. These surveys they'll be doing will allow our comms team to do more targeted messaging, because it's about, I've been up to the incinerator and I know that a lot of what goes in there could be recycled. So you are burning recyclable material, and, so it's all very well saying let's recycle more products, which I'm absolutely for. I work with Hampshire County Council. I meet with them regularly. I've got a meeting with them tomorrow looking at the infrastructure. And as John said, it is a long-term thing, but it's also working with Serco, who I am really pleased we've got a contract with now, and I am really pleased they're on board, because I've just sat there for half an hour and explained that they are with the comms team. It's a big team, a very experienced team, and I can assure you they're really enthusiastic, very committed. and it's all about getting that messaging out there, and that is what we are doing, and that's what we will continue to do, and also not losing sight of the fact that there are quite a lot of products in this county that we can recycle, and it's making sure we get them into the waste stream as well, and at least we know they are sustainable. So yes, there's always more work to do, and I appreciate that, but I'm confident that Serco will work with us in helping us to increase that recycling rate.
Right, and before you come back, hey, John, you began by saying Claire's the sort of person you'd want to work with. Are you? Well, I think we've got your email address. Are you happy for us to pass that on to John? Okay, then. And now, if you want to just quickly come back.
You should take a look at South Cambridgeshire's website. I think, in this kind of thing, we all need to learn from one another. And there are some really succinct and beautiful messaging things going on. South Cambridgeshire collect a heck of a lot, and therefore, because there's not too many exceptions, they can bung it all on a single sheet of A4. And if that went out with every bin collection, then the message would clearly be getting across. It's
Okay.
just the one.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, and now we have Councillor Janet Westbrook, which makes a change. I think last time we did waste, it was Councillor Mike Westbrook. Okay, you don't need me explain the rules to you, so you have your 4 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come along and ask a few questions this evening. I'm hoping to get a better understanding on some of the areas I've got of concern. Generally, we know that residents report miscollections and other issues through either the contact centre or online reporting, and they come to us as ward councillors when those options have been exhausted. And I don't know how many reports of miscollections are being received by the council, but after accepting that there may have been a period where there was a handover, I'm concerned to find that as ward councillors we're still being regularly contacted about miscollections, and in particular in this month alone with my fellow ward councillor we've received complaints about miscollections affecting over 20 properties. I'm going to give some examples and I'd welcome your thoughts, please. The first one relates to a group of 6 properties where, having checked the Christmas and New Year revised collection dates and putting them out on the correct date, their general waste bins remained unemptied for some time. They reported this to the contact centre and were told that their collection point had been changed. Hence, they were not collected and that the new collection point was in another road. They'd been using the location for the last 5 or 6 years. They hadn't been told of any change, and so they contacted us, firstly to try and get the bins emptied as they were overflowing, and then to establish whether this information was correct and their collection point actually had been changed. The bins were subsequently emptied, but we haven't had confirmation either way about the change of collection point, although we know that last week they were collected from their original location. So can I ask whether any collection points have changed, and if so, how has this been communicated to residents? And also, if there has been, how the contact centre are kept up to date with any changes? And is it possible that the contact centre would know, but the residents wouldn't? Or could this have been an error by the contact centre, do you think? That's one of the examples. The following week, we were contacted by a group comprising of about 8 properties where bins were not collected, and this time it was recycling. Officers took this forward for us and the bins were emptied, but my question is, has there been any changes to routes which might have explained it? I know that other ward councillors are receiving the same types of complaints and they're not necessarily just one-offs. Then we've had a report of glass boxes, again in a row of neighbouring properties, left for almost 6 weeks. Again, same sort of thing. We've had cases where elderly residents who use the assisted collection service have had their general waste collected, but not the recycling. And the missed recycling collection, we understand, goes back as far as November. The resident in question has been in hospital, came back, it's still not collected. I thought one of the features of the new contract was that the collection vehicles would have an in-cab warning system telling the driver when an assisted collection was required near where they were. Is that correct? I don't know. I've given examples of missed general waste, missed recycling, missed glass boxes, missed assisted collections, And I've got a couple more questions about the communal bin stores. I welcome the measures that you mentioned earlier in your presentation that you're going to do with the bin stores. I should perhaps declare an interest here, as I live in a property where we use a communal bin store. But my question is, when the bins are returned to the bin store, would you expect them to be returned to their original positions? Because they're just being left inside a store and expecting the residents to have to move them around to be able to access them, which, you know, if it's somebody like me, they're pretty heavy, these bins, it's a problem. And finally, I know there's an intention to improve the information on recycling, and I've noticed the banner on your new waste collection lorries, which is really good. However, the recycling 1100 litre bins have banners on them showing you what you can recycle, but it doesn't include a picture advising residents to put the items in loose. And so what we're finding in some of the bin stores is they're being put into those large bins in bags. And I don't know whether you still take bins when they're put in bags. So is that being looked at, please? So I think, to summarise, our experiences show that there is still some concerns and some miscollections. And if we can accept that, then we can all work together to put that right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think Councillor Each just wants to go first.
Thank you, Chair. So any specific issues I don't think we can talk about this evening. It's not really appropriate, but if there are specific repetitive issues, then absolutely that's not right. I'm not saying anything's perfect at the moment, but then you need to let us know that, or officers know those specific issues, so they can be investigated. Bins being returned to bin stores, then absolutely my view would be, and I'm sure it's Serco's as well, that they should be put back in the same place. They shouldn't just be, and they're nodding. So my understanding is as well, having met with officers and discussed this, when there is assisted collection, there is a beeping in the lorry to let them know, and if it isn't cleared down, it will keep going. So again, we'll look into that, and if there's specific assisted collection that you say is constantly not being collected, then we need to know about that, and it can be looked at. But yeah, absolutely, the transition period. So the contract starts on the 1st of October. The transition period finished on the 14th of January. There have been, and we've said that all along, some performance issues over that time. Officers have been working very closely, as have I, with officers and with Serco to address those issues, and we will absolutely continue to do that. Serco provided us with a very detailed action plan that's being monitored very closely by John and all his team that work that are based in Hart but work very closely here. They're often in these offices, and Maria's sat here, Sarah's often here, and there's a whole team that is monitoring that, and they work closely with Jason and the team. We also have a joint, the JGG meetings now, which are the joint governance group. Serco always come to the end of those meetings, and there's another one of those on Monday, so everything will be looked at again then. There has been, I think, there's no route changes, because you asked whether there have been recent route changes. There hasn't been route changes, but there have been a look at minor round balancing and things, but that doesn't change your collection day or anything. But Serco have been providing additional crews, staff supervision, and then we will have ongoing dialogue with Serco to make sure all these reliability issues, and I appreciate that the most awful ones are the repetitive ones, so if there are ones, let us know. And we do have a very good working relationship with Serco, as in we will tell them when there's not something right, and we will, you know, get responses, and it might not happen overnight, but we will then make sure John and his team are pushing that through and keeping an eye on that action plan constantly. So hopefully that answers everything. But like I say, if there's continued specific ones, you need to let us know.
Thank you. I think I didn't catch the have any collection points changed question being answered. And
I'm not sure. We can find out. I don't know.
I wouldn't be able to tell you if any collection points have changed. We've got an officer responsible for each area, so I wouldn't like to comment when they're not here to verify that. But like I said, if you give us the detailed information, and I can check that for you. The only slight, you know, reason for miscollections, or we've been loading all of our round information onto our new IT system, and there are, you know, a very, very tiny percentage of properties which may have been, you know, assigned to a different round for the wrong reason, even though they should have stayed on their existing round. They've been ironed out now. As far as I'm aware, we're pretty much there with that. So there are those kind of tiny teething problems, but obviously when it's your bin and your collection, it's really annoying and it's a big deal. So like I said, let me know about those specific properties, and I'll double check with the officer responsible for that area, just to check there aren't any collection point changes. But no, as a team, we would always send a letter and normally consult before we change the collection point. So I'm very surprised to hear that a resident wouldn't have received any information about a change of collection point, because normally we consult them first and then just send a letter to confirm where it's going to be with a map. So yeah, I'd be really interested to know which properties they were, if that's all right.
And was there a question about recycling being put in bags in the big bin store bins? I know you won't take it if it's an individual resident, but what happens if it's one of the communal bins?
Yeah, no, we don't accept recyclables in plastic bags, and that'll be a key part of our communications. One of our consistent messages is clean, dry and loose. So, you know, we want, you know, the materials in a clean state and loose in the bin, and that'll be a key strapline and message for when we release all the flats guidance and signage and whatnot.
Okay, any quick supplementaries? Okay, thank you very much. Right, members, it's over to you. And as I say, we won't attempt to split the questions from the comments, because in the view of this nature of the subject, it's probably best to do the two together. Yes, Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Chair. I had 5 questions.
Don't do them all at once. Do a couple, and then we'll let someone else have a go.
Okay. Questions 1 and 2 then. The first one is regarding mist collections, and trying to get an idea of what the impact of the transition period was, and whether the mist collections that we saw before Christmas, for instance, are going to be something that we can demonstrate was, you know, sort of temporary thing, or whether we're likely to see problems in the future. One particular example, I think Winklebury, 21st December, a number of roads were missed there. There was a fair amount on it on social media, certainly in the build-up to the weeks leading up to Christmas. I got the distinct impression that places like Whitchurch and Winklebury that have their collection on the Friday were more likely to be affected than places like Brighton Hill, which have it on a Monday. I'm not sure if there's any sort of knock-on effects around through the week. So yeah, anything you can give to sort of explain what might have happened before Christmas, and what steps are in place to make sure it doesn't happen in the new year. The other thing, replacement bin charges. We had a previous full council meeting where a lot of comments were made on that, but certainly one of the gripes that residents have is with things like broken bins and glass boxes. So they see glass boxes being chucked around basically, or glass being chucked into a bin and a guy running around with an orange bin to put in the back of the glass recycler, and then they're being charged for things that they haven't broken. And also some of these black wheelie bins, they're like 20 years old, so they're going to break sooner or later. So you know, I'm wondering how realistic the expectation is that, certainly in the eyes of the public, you buy a bin and then you're expected to buy a new one, you know, as if you own the bin. You know, if you own the bin, then you pack it in your removal van and take it with you when you move house. That's clearly not the expectation of many of our residents. So I would like to see some assurances to residents that they're not going to have the onus put on them to try and prove that it wasn't them that broke bins, because at the moment it seems they're not given the benefit of the doubt at all, and they're expected to pay for bins that in many cases have been not broken by them.
Okay, two questions, yeah.
Just answer on the paid bin points. Obviously, that's been debated at full council and at committee previously. It's not right if green glass boxes are being chucked around, but just to be clear, green glass boxes are not charged for. Residents can have as many of those as they want. We want to encourage recycling, so they can have extra green bins if they want them for free. Yes, the replacement black bins are charged for. Obviously, each case will be looked at on its own issues about whether it went in the back of a lorry, broken by the bin member. You know, each case would just be looked at on its own merits. But certainly, if people want extra green glass containers, then they want to recycle more glass, they can have more of them for free.
Just come in on the miscollection side of things. I think the first thing, and Jason might well want to say something in a minute anyway, but there isn't a magic wand to sort this out. I think it's important that members remember that the contract, when it came across, there have been some long-standing underlying problems with the contract and the way maybe the level of staffing, etc. Those issues are going to take time to be addressed. And the purpose of the transition period, I suppose, and that applies to every new contract. There's always going to be a period where the new contractor needs to take time to assess the issues with the contract. Every contractor's possibly got a different idea of how they want to run those contracts. So that's the purpose of the transition period. There were problems before Christmas. Things have much improved in the last few weeks. I guess that there's always the problems until those big underlying issues have been resolved, and I think there's probably ongoing work associated with that. It's probably going to take time. So whilst I think everybody here and everybody working together to do their best, there's always the potential for problems. But I don't know if Jason wants to say anything.
Just the issue with miscollections. What John said, we've seen a big improvement since after Christmas. A big contributing factor is obviously the team are embedded in terms of using this new system. The crews using the PDAs properly. That has having a much more effect since Christmas, and they're getting much more used to using that. So missed bins, particularly for January, have vastly reduced, and we'll see that ongoing because of the visibility of the service and the white space in cab system. We will see much better results in the future. Just on the bins, just to bring up, part of what we will be doing is on bins, we will be looking at repairing bins as well. So we will be looking at an exchange in time. So as we start building up a stock and we start repairing some of the bins, we'll be able to distribute repair bins rather than issuing brand new bins.
Okay. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to be positive, and first thing I'll say is your crews I've come across in my area and where I live, they've been really good. I've got to say that, and I think we can be negative about the collection, but the guys who are doing the work are coming across very well, in my view, and that's what I've noticed. So I don't want anybody to go away thinking it's only them old bin men who do the actual work. There is a few problems, and one of the problems we're finding in my ward, I've raised on a number of occasions, don't go to sleep over there, I'm watching you, is bins in particular, where we put them. Now, I've had complaints from disabled people and people with prams and pushchairs. On a Tuesday when it's collected, this curbside collection, they block the pavements. And if they don't block the pavements, they're blocking the roads or the garage areas. Now, I did have a meeting with our officers and one of your officers. I had no response. This was before Christmas. I wonder if we can actually talk about changing some areas where bins are collected, trying to be positive, and see what we can do there. And the other problem we have is when, was it your white space thing, sounds really good. Where bins are contaminated and you don't take them away, they just sit there. And they've been sitting there, well, they've gone now, the ones we actually looked at, to be fair, but they sit there, no one knows anything about it, and the residents who put them there most probably don't give a what's it. So it just sits there. How are we going to deal with that? Because one, it's sitting on the pavement or in the garage area. We as ward councillors, we get it in the ear from the residents who live nearby, and we need some response, and we don't seem to be connecting with your company. It's obviously new, or someone where we can actually get some response. It's okay going through the call centre, but I don't want to be rude to them, but we've gone past that stage when it comes to the councillors, and we need somewhere to go, somebody to talk to, so we need a contact to find out what's happening, how we can resolve it, and things like that. And I think that is...
Well, you can come back later anyway.
Nice.
And before they try and answer your second question, can you clarify, are you talking about black bins not collected because they're contaminated, or green bins? Both. Okay.
I don't know if your policies change when the black bins are overfilled. You weren't taking them away. I've noticed in my road, to be fair, they have been, but in the past they haven't under the old contract. But it's basically green bins. Some people think they can put anything in there, and you ain't collect it, so what? I'm not going to recycle. And we need to work together on this one.
Just on the bit with collection points and things, I think that's being looked at, so we'll deal with that offline and get you a response, and that is, and I think you've spoken to Rebecca, so we'll do what we can and it will be considered. What was the other issues?
I hope it will be considered, and not just flippant. It will be considered. No, we're doing nothing. I hope it will be considered because it is important.
I didn't for 1 minute say it isn't important, and I don't like the fact that you imply I just flippantly said that. Rebecca's just shown me an email that it is being dealt with. It's just not relevant to try and deal. If we sat here tonight dealing with every Pacific ward and issue, then we would be here all evening.
I'm not saying that. I didn't expect it to happen today, but I have been on about this for a long time, as you well know. I think, Rebecca.
Okay, light off, please, Councillor Jones, and then we can have the answer to your other question about the bins not being, bins that shouldn't be collected. What happens if they sit around for a long time and nobody deals with them?
The collection of contaminated recycling bins is very much a policy-driven thing, really. There's a huge cost associated to collecting contaminated bins. I don't know what the cost is under the new contract, but it used to cost us in the region of £35 to collect a contaminated green bin. So obviously officers would normally do everything that they can to get residents to take the responsibility of that waste, dispose of it in their black bin so that we can start afresh. However, if a resident opens up communication with us and we can speak to them about the issues around their recycling and, say to them, okay, well, we can empty your bin on this one occasion. However, you will need to adhere to the recycling, and fill it up accordingly. So we do consider issues like that. We will go and empty a contaminated green bin at a cost, to the contract. But we do want to open up communications with those residents to ensure it doesn't happen again, because we can't repeatedly empty contaminated green bins as waste because it's expensive and it's not, it's counterproductive.
Hang on. John wants to say something, and then Councillor Jones come back. And Maria needs to turn her microphone off, please.
It was only just to say on the specific item, just to add to Councillor Each's say, apologies if you didn't get a response following the meeting, but I know I've certainly met with you on occasions out on site. Be happy to do that again in the future, and if officers need to walk around and look at particular issues, we will do that. Bins on pavements are always going to be an issue, I think, in blocking pavements. I don't know, again, of an easy solution, but it's something we can talk to you about.
Can I just come back on these contaminated bins? The point I'm really getting across, if someone's made a mistake, I'm sure they're more than happy to talk to you. Yeah. It's the how can you say it, the people who don't care. But we need to know as councillors and people living around them, they don't want that rubbish there all the time, sitting there for weeks on end. We've had it in certain areas in my ward, I'm ashamed to say, but it's the residents who come to me and say, we can't be poking up with all this rubbish. Because what normally happens if they're not taken away, a lot of these people don't just, their rubbish then goes round their bin. And I know for a fact, last year and the year before, we cleared out God knows how many in one particular area. But it's something we need to communicate with, so perhaps, if you understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I think in that kind of scenario, you would just literally take away the recycling facility from that person. If after a given opportunity, they, fail to use the recycling service properly after we've emptied the green bin, if we then encounter the same problem, again and again, then I think ultimately we don't like to do it, but we would just remove that bin, so that it can't be filled with rubbish. Again and again, because that's when it gets left, that's when it creates a smell and unpleasant for, for neighbouring properties.
Councillor Rattigan.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to put on record that the service is much improved. I've had no calls from my parish councils on missed bins in Kingsclere, Ashford Hill, Headley, so I'm delighted with the service. But a couple of points, if I may. You've mentioned flats, and I think it's very pertinent to the town area. Are you going to speak to our planning department about how the construction of the waste in new developments or permitted developments is situated so as you get the best opportunity to hit the recycling targets, the residents get the best opportunity to recycle and know which bin it is, and there may well be language difficulties there, so I just raised that point, if I may. Your telephone communications, obviously not all residents are on an 01256 number. My residents are on 01189 and obviously 01635, so I just want to make sure that you pick that up. And for further communication, can I suggest that you speak to the parish councils about how we can raise visibility for recycling? Parish councils are very keen to take up issues like this, and I'm sure you'd find a lot of support if you lift the telephone to them or to speak to the clerk. So just very quickly those points. Thank you.
Thank you. The first one about planning was a question, so I know. I mean, that's not a criticism that the others weren't, because that is kind. Do you want to respond to the question about talking to planning?
So we get the opportunity to comment on all planning applications, and we have a supplementary planning guidance which outlines the minimum that we would expect from a development in terms of size of allowance for waste and recycling and all the other different containers that you need. Unfortunately, it's not one of those things that has to be taken as seriously as we believe it should be taken. And that's an issue nationally. I mean, we can stipulate how big a bin store needs to be, what bins, they need to house there, the road conditions, up to, those stores. Other than that, there isn't a huge amount of leeway that we have, which is a real shame. We always make comments, especially on bin stores, not so much on if people are just building one house on a main road or whatever. But yeah, we always consider it, and we are always trying to push for the best. But often our requests aren't always fully met. But no, I appreciate that.
Then can I, from this committee, suggest that something goes forward to the planning team, suggesting that more emphasis or an informative is put on flatted development so as we get the best bin storage possible and have the best opportunities to recycle. Thank you.
Everybody happy that we include that in our minutes? Okay, thank you. And it's Councillor George next.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to really also emphasise what Councillor Raskin has said actually here. Certainly before Christmas and a little bit beyond, my inbox was full of, I'm afraid, emails about miscollections and everything else. But frankly, it's been absolutely quiet for the last little while. It really has. And in fact, very rarely I've actually had a positive feedback, actually, which I'd just like to both our recycling bags have been collected without hiccup for the last 7 weeks, and this was a problem before then, so very well done. And they actually said, would those amongst you who help facilitate this improvement please accept our thanks. So there's some positive feedback. I'm sure you don't get much of it, but actually I don't, frankly, but that's something very positive for you. Now, I'm also interested in a couple of things here. We've seen this issue of the lack of a sustainable endpoint for some of these materials, and we'd all heard tonight about improving our recycling percentage. But the trouble is, there's actually these things. If you just have a higher recycling percentage, but there's no sustainable endpoint for the stuff you do recycle, it becomes counterproductive. Can I ask whether it's certainly within your remit or the Basingstoke-Deans or Hampshire County Council to really try and look at the endpoint and the markets that are available for these wastes and improve those? Is that part of your programme, and can you comment on that? And the second question I've got, Helen, I really loved your communication programme and everything else. That looks very, very good. One of the things about most of the communication programmes is is positive feedback into the loop. And I'm just, for my personal interest and perhaps things, it's what are the, have we identified what the real motivators behind recycling are? You know, why do people do it? And also, you know, if they are doing that, what positive feedback have we got to pinpoint and say you're doing it for this reason, therefore you're positive, and to what extent can Basingstoke and Dean get involved in that feedback loop? Thank you.
In relation to the unstable end markets, I'll throw a stat at you now because I haven't done all evening. But if residents of Basingstoke fully utilised the services that we already have and the end markets that we already have, which are very good and very sustainable, we would have a recycling rate in excess of 45%. As you all know, it's lingering around the 30% mark, sometimes just below. So our main focus at the moment is to fully utilise all of the end markets that we already have before we start adding more things. The waste strategy was released by central government just before Christmas. Within that strategy, there's a very big focus on the lack of end market. It's just not there. It's not there for what we produce. There isn't an end market for it. And I think that's finally a problem that they've realised and either said, okay, well, if we don't have an end market for that material, then should we be producing it in the first place? Should we be packaging our food in it? You know, should we be using it? And the answer is, where possible, no, we shouldn't. But also they're then looking at the infrastructure that's required to facilitate all local authorities to be able to recycle the mixed plastics, all of those kind of things. Another key consultation within that waste strategy is there's a few consultations, and one of those is the possible ban of single-use plastics. So cutting it off at the start. We don't need to recycle it because it shouldn't be in the waste stream in the first place. So we're very, very much waiting to see what that strategy means for us, because in terms of disposal, it's a huge project. You know, we have to look at our MRF, our sorting facilities, we have to look at our disposal facilities, and that's not a small, cheap job to do. And if we did that now, it would be very premature, because a couple of years down the line, our waste stream might look very, very different.
Just to add to what Maria said, because we are working with Hampshire, and one of the big things that was on the table and was likely to happen is that they build this new big MRF, this new materials recovery facility, and Veolia have got the contract for the disposal side and run the incinerator, and they're all looking at that, and then suddenly the government say that they're going to be bringing out this consultation. So if they go and spend millions and millions of pounds on putting in all the infrastructure to recycle plastic, they make their money by getting the recycling the materials and selling it on, and that's another good, you know, it's good environmentally to recycle, but it also makes the council money. So if they then spend all those millions, but then they can't recycle it, so at the moment Hampshire aren't saying no, but what they're doing is looking at it and saying, well, what are the government going to do? Because if all the plastic bottles are going to go into a deposit return scheme, then our business case doesn't stack up, because as much as we all hate it, it does all come back down to the money they have to spend to put the infrastructure in the first place. So there's another big meeting of Hampshire at the end of February to try and move that along. Now we've had the strategy out, and to consider where we go. So Hampshire are not saying they won't continue to encourage recycling, and they want to build a new MRF. The current one's 14, 15 years old, and it's probably getting to the end of its life, and especially as more houses are built and more people are putting stuff into the waste stream, it's going to be at capacity. So it absolutely has to be looked at, but it's getting the business case right, but then also making sure that the products we do put in there do have a proper end market and that they are being recycled.
Yeah, you were going to come back on the other question.
Hi, so motivators. We are all motivated by different things. So some people are motivated by wanting to do the right thing. Some people are motivated because they saw David Attenborough and the Blue Planet and they've seen what happens to wildlife. Some people are motivated, as I said, because their neighbours do it. So each and every person is motivated by different things. So the idea with the recycling campaigns that we're running at the moment, which are more general campaigns, are using this social norming message. So everyone around me is, therefore I need to be. And then, as I mentioned, when we get to years 2 and 3 of the contract, we will be able to look at more specific rounds with issues that we can tailor messages and communications to suit that particular demographic. But at the moment, we need to generate more recycling and the right recycling across the borough. So that's why we're going with this, the RAP recommended social norming messaging.
Okay, Councillor Kim Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick couple of things, really. The green glass boxes, I'm just wondering if there is perhaps an opportunity to look at these, their durability, the nature of them, perhaps replacing them with something that is more, you know, a little bit more sustainable, because they do get broken, and also residents consistently complain that they're not actually very nice. They're full of water and bits of leaves and all sorts, because for a majority of our residents, certainly in the ward that I will be in, they have to be left outside. You know, they don't have masses of space, and it becomes a problem in the general overall feel of the environment. They don't get taken care of, and they do break very easily, and they are frequently broken. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to find a more imaginative way of doing that without big bins, which people also don't have the space to store. And secondly, I was, you know, really pleased to see the commitment to take on an apprentice. I think that's really great. I would be even more pleased if there was a commitment to perhaps, you know, you could assure us that they weren't just be paid the apprenticeship minimum wage and actually the going rate for the job. That would be really great. But that's just a personal hobby horse.
So within Serco, we do not pay the apprentice rate. We employ a lot of apprentices. I had one in my team the year before last. Sadly, he left me because he found his dream job. He was paid more than the national living wage. We feel that it's only right that someone gets the right wage for the job that they're doing. So for us, this isn't about cheap labour. This is about bringing someone on board through the scheme and giving them skills that hopefully, if there's a position vacant, that they will stay with us and continue to use and learn, or that they can take on into another role.
The second question was...
In regards to glass boxes, I'm more than happy to take it back to the team and look again to the market to see what's there in terms of product and durability and whatnot. It's a well-known fact, very unfortunate fact, that the higher recycled content you put into plastics, whether that be kitchen caddies, glass boxes, whatever, their durability isn't quite as good. You don't get the exact same longevity that you would do if you used virgin plastic. Now, obviously, for us to close the loop, we use recycled content, we do, and I can't imagine that we would want to not use any recycled content. But I'm more than happy to go back to our suppliers and look at other suppliers to see what else is out there and bring a few back to have a look, because you do find as well that if you don't move around suppliers and have a look at what's out there, you can very easily fall into the trap of just reordering the same. But I'm more than happy to go out and have a look at what else there is.
Councillor Carruthers.
Just wanted to say thank you for what was a very informative report, really reassuring. I personally felt that your communication regarding recycling looks fantastic. So, yeah, great to see. I represent Tadley South. I have not received any complaints or concerns from residents in my area, which is brilliant. The narrow vehicles, I'm sure, will be very welcome to some of the people in my area. We have some very little lanes. Just one question from a specific case I've dealt with, but a general question. When somebody has a bin damaged or for some reason has to have a bin replaced, a normal size grey bin, are you replacing them with the same size bin or a smaller bin? Because I've experienced people getting a smaller bin, and I just wondered if that is now the norm.
They're replaced with a smaller bin. That was made policy a number of years ago as part of the encourage people to recycle. So you can have as many green bins as you want and things, but black bins, if they're replaced, will be 140 litres. We did consider doing that across the whole borough to encourage recycling, but the cost was, you know, to replace everybody's black bin with 100 was prohibitive. So, yeah, it's a smaller bin, 140 litre.
Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points to make, or a couple of questions actually. I'd also what you're saying about planning on new flats, and also what Councillor Taylor said about the glass bottle bins. Actually, I've had a couple of broken ones, and when they get stolen and all sorts. But so I'm glad you're looking into that. But my question is about flats. I mean, I represent a ward where we have problems with no bin stores for flats, and they're over 60 years old, these flats now. So I know that Sovereign have been looking into it for years. It's Sovereign own the landlord. So are Serco and the council working with Sovereign to actually try and resolve this problem? I'd like to get an answer on that. And the other one was, one of the caseworks I did get over Christmas and beyond was the assistance program for disabled people getting their bins out seemed to break down. Actually, I must admit it has got better, but I don't know what I have not received any complaints lately, so hopefully that's okay. But there was quite a lot of problems. I think there's a switch of data going over. I hope that's all been resolved now.
Yeah, certainly can confirm there have been problems with the assisted collections. I think we've made big progress on that side of things, though, so a lot of those issues have now been addressed, and you're correct in thinking it was to do with the data that was being held behind that. And the other question was, sorry, I missed that one. Flats, that's it, and I thought Maria might be.
Yeah, we will be communicating with Sovereign, we'll be communicating with all the housing associations. Our plan over the next couple of years is sort of to build ourselves a list of priority in terms of those flats where we feel the need is the largest, and just, yeah, work our way through and speak to the housing associations. Obviously, if they're looking to develop bin stores and there's a large cost associated with that, we won't be able to bridge that gap, but obviously we will assist in, you know, in any way that we can, and also improving what they already have if it looks like a bin store isn't going to be, you know, likely anytime soon.
Yeah, I'd like to see a bit more positive towards that, because it is a real problem, because the Pacific Road on my estate, all the bins are all just left out. I know that Sovereign are looking at it, but they've been looking at it a long time. So I'd like some more positive action and communication between Serco and Sovereign, because it is a real problem. The bins are getting burnt, tipped over, and just left out on the road blocking the footpath, so because there's nowhere to put them.
We can nudge them.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah, thanks. Because so if you're just looking at existing stores, that won't pick up the places that don't have stores. So I think you've picked the point. I've got a couple of questions before we start going around for second bites of the cherry from people. Two very different questions. First, on the missed bin issue, Jason, you explained that the new vehicles have 360-degree cameras, which I assume means video cameras. So do the contact centre have access to that in real time? So if someone says my bin's been missed, Maria's shaking her head, so I assume that means that you can't actually see whether it drove past the bin that was by the edge of the pavement, which would be very useful.
What you can do is the crews, if they see a bin that's not being presented, they should log an exception on their device. They then can, and the same with a contamination, they can take a photo, which then is uploaded. So when the contact centre receive a call, they can see if anything's been logged against that property. And that then would be able to, for instance, if it was contaminated, they would be able to tell the resident it wasn't collected because it's contaminated. I can see the photo. In terms of, apart from that as well, you've also got tracking of the vehicle. So from our offices, we can tell if the vehicle's been past that road as well.
And a completely different question. John knows I always have a recycling question on these things. I think we've been well trained that the plastic bottles have to be without lids. And I'd always assume that applied to glass bottles and jars as well, but your photos in your proposed lids seem to have lids on some of your glass bottles. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, it is acceptable on some glass bottles. What we tended to do with the development of that leaflet and the banner is leave lids on things that we thought some people might find it tricky to get them off. So people have said to us before, oh, well, I didn't recycle that wine bottle because it had a metal trim around it which I couldn't get off, and that's not what we want. Glass is quite different in that it's broken specifically before it goes through the process, so any lids or anything like that don't present the same kind of problem that they do on plastic bottles.
I'm glad that's the answer, because getting the lids off vinegar bottles is incredibly difficult. Right, we're back to Councillor McCormick.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I'll just do my last three and then that'll be it for me. Garden waste campaign, January to June 2019. Most garden waste is in the autumn, and there's a picture of a elderly gentleman and little girl throwing leaves in the air. The bulk of the leaf collection is going to be in the end of November. I'm just wondering why it was decided we'd have the garden waste campaign in the beginning of the year when it would make some sort of sense to have a campaign September, October, November, when we're getting all these leaves and we're going to have a peak in garden waste collection. So that's the first question. Second one was the resident satisfaction survey. I don't know if there was any results that had come out of that yet, or whether it was still very early days and we didn't know. And finally, Maria, I'm going to have to pick you up on this. Bin stalls in flats, and you said that's down to laziness. I am aware of specific issues where it's essentially with new flatty developments where there've been insufficient provision for bin stalls, and it's caused some really serious problems. Not in my ward, I hasten to add, but in other wards. Health and safety issues, bin stalls overflowing. So I'd like to know what Serco are doing to work with people like Vivid and Sovereign, specifically on new flats where quite often there is insufficient provision. And are you going to be looking at things like multiple collections a week, Wednesday, Friday, for instance, because it is totally unacceptable where we have situations where we have health and safety issues through the build-up of waste, and residents are basically under the impression, or they're told in some cases, just produce less waste. You know, eat less, have babies that use fewer nappies, whatever. It's unacceptable.
Right, I'll let you go, though. I do remember that Maria did say sometimes it was laziness, not all the time. But three questions there. Take your pick as to who goes.
Well, I was going to say, I'll leave Maria to talk about the garden waste campaign and why the spring. Survey results, I do know that we've had some results back, but it's still early days and we haven't had a chance to assess those yet. So that's still work in progress. And the final point on the flats, I think it's probably worth clarifying that Councillor McCormack mentioned what Serco are doing about liaising with Sovereign, but it's very clear that that's something for the council to do. And we are in conversation. So as a council, as the joint waste client team, we are certainly speaking to Sovereign and all the other housing associations and working with them where we can. So is that, and Maria, I don't know if you want to say.
For Maria, that was a no to could you collect more than once a week from places where there aren't enough bins?
So I mean, if that's the case, then it would be for the council to decide how often the frequency of collection. We would work with Serco on that and say, well, actually, could we put in a second collection? That's possible. We could certainly do that if it was required.
My main concern would be if there isn't enough provision, like you say, in terms of if it hasn't been adhered to, you know, there's a minimum requirement of how much waste capacity flats should have, and then there's a realistic requirement, and we very much in Basingstoke and Dean go with a realistic requirement. So my first question, you know, with the housing association would be in terms of what provision they've allowed, because obviously that's a main problem. In terms of garden waste, our busiest time for garden waste is spring. Unfortunately, with the grass cutting, hedge trimmings after the birdies have flown their nests, and also it's very much been led by the type of service that we used to have. So we used to have a pro rata service, which meant we opened up our IT systems in January. That service ran through to December. The system was then closed off and started up again. Now that we're moving to residents being able to sign up any time throughout the year, but their subscription lasting for a whole calendar year, we basically want to get as many people as we can as soon as possible to ensure that the service is sort of environmentally and financially sustainable, because it doesn't do us any favours having trucks out there. Yeah, our sign-ups during autumn are very low. Our sign-ups during spring and early summer are very high. This summer was slightly different. Due to it being very hot and dry, that's just a technicality. We did have less sign-ups in June than we would normally have, but yeah, that's why we're promoting the service as early as possible.
Thank you. Light again, and it's Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I think I need to apologise. I've been told I've been showing my age when I mentioned bin men and women, so I do apologise to that. No, my question is about the survey. I wonder whether, when you do the survey, whether you can break it down to wards rather than rounds and actually feed that into us councillors, because it would be interesting from our perspective to see what is being said, because we hear of the complaints, but people don't come up to us and say, well, what a great service, or very few. It's usually the complaints. So I think we need a balance. If we could possibly, it'd be great.
Hi, the survey results will be broken down into wards. However, it is the resident is given the option to give a postcode, so you will have a number of unmatched in the results, because if someone doesn't want to give their postcode to allow yes, we ask for a postcode. Our survey partner does, and it's explained why, and that's down to the residents to choose. Okay.
Now, Councillor Jones apologised, but I actually made a note that Helen also used the word bin men. And I was going to ask the question whether they are all men, and if so, whether you have any plans to try and promote this as a suitable career for women. Good. Yes, Councillor Kim Taylor.
Thank you. I mean, it's my question really is about the recycling of other elements, and I appreciate that what you're saying is you don't want to start recycling other elements until you feel that you're recycling what you're collecting now to the fullest possible. And it's very distressing to hear about the continual and dynamic nature of the market and the government not helping, because then it's not possible to make sensible plans at county level for disposing recycling and finding end markets. I mean, I would hope that we would have been able to find, in some imaginative way, end markets for things like food recycling a little bit quicker and perhaps a little bit more independently, and it would be good to know whether that's possible. I was really disappointed to read in today's FT that Tesco's has decided to close its fresh food counters in the majority of its stores, which means that even more food is going to be put in mixed plastic wrap containers. So this is a situation that clearly is never going to go away, no matter how hard we try. So at some point we need to be pragmatic and accept, taking a view that we won't do other things until we're fully recycling everything that we collect at the moment. We're maxed out on that. Isn't really the most pragmatic or sensible way forward. But I understand the restrictions are often sort of quite external and these political issues. Do we have an end in sight, or a view about when in time we might well be able to start looking at things like food products and mixed plastics being collected from the doorstep? I mean, have we got a target in mind to start looking at this, you know, seriously, irrespective of everything else?
Okay, so just to come back on that, I'm not saying that I don't want to look at it, and it is actually being looked at. It was a huge thing last year with Project Integra, who is the county partnership that works with all the authorities across Hampshire, and they were on the way to, you know, signing on the dotted line for a big deal of the new MRF that would collect mixed plastics and everything, and the business case was drafted up confidentially, and it was all, well, you know, it was nearly there. I think I might say that, John. And then suddenly we had all this deposit return scheme, all these other things. And then we in Basingstoke, being one of the only authorities in Hampshire that took the initiative to have mixed plastic banks, and I know there was lots of stuff around that. And, you know, that wasn't, I didn't make a decision to close those plastic banks because I'm against recycling other products. As you all know, we did that because the end market became, there wasn't one, and it was being incinerated, so it was unfair to send people to car parks to recycle their plastic when it wasn't being recycled. And then we looked at other authorities, and it turned out that although they were recycling mixed plastics, it was being taken out of their waste stream and burnt anyway, so it wasn't just us, it's not just a Basingstoke issue. So I'm not saying we don't want to do other products, and we absolutely do, and Project Integra in Hampshire are always looking at that, and we've always been doing it. But what I'm saying is we can't lose sight of the fact that we also have work to do. So whilst there is work going on in the background, and I can absolutely promise you that work is ongoing, and Project Integra are meeting at the end of February for a very big meeting, and that is a public meeting. If you wanted to come along, the papers are produced and they're public, aren't they? All on the website. Can't remember the date off the top of my head. It's usually on a Thursday, but I think because it's such a long meeting, it's on a Tuesday this month. So work is being ongoing. They haven't just stopped, and they're still looking at, can we build a MRF that does mix recycled plastics and all of that? Can we do one? Because in fact, it's also complicated because not everybody in Hampshire collects glass as well. There's only a handful of us that collect glass. So do we just have across the whole of Hampshire that we have a glass collection that's not a separate one? So it is being looked at, but I make the point again, I just don't want to lose sight of the products that we can recycle, because I think, and we're all, you know, it's become so embedded, oh yeah, we can recycle that, it's fine, and but you forget when you go to that incinerator and you see the things coming off the back of the lorry, and it is really sad to see that loads of those things can be recycled. So we need to concentrate on that as well. But I'm not saying we're not thinking of forward thinking and that work isn't being done to move that forward, and we'll absolutely have much more information at the end of February. So if you look out for the PI information, and that, you know, we can update members in time once the Hampshire have made the decisions. So it is ongoing, absolutely it is. And it is, again, working with government to find end markets, and like Maria said earlier, it's actually all about the circular economy and probably not generating and manufacturing those plastics in the first place, because if there isn't an end market, then don't make them.
Before you come back, just say, I mean, the materials recovery facilities get mentioned is an impressive place. I mean, if you ever get a chance to visit, and it's highly automated. I mean, there are a few human beings at the beginning fishing out the things that shouldn't be there. Almost all the rest of the sorting is done by different sorts of machines with lights and magnets and all sorts of stuff. It's very Heath Robinson, but it works very effectively. But it does mean that and that's an old one. You can't just add something to it because the machinery isn't there to sort it into the right box. And when I was there, which is a few years ago now, the building was full. There wasn't room to add another section on the line. So Councillor Eaches is right. What needed is a new facility that's designed to take more stuff, because it is an automated facility.
I mean, I'm particularly sort of interested in, doorstep food collection. So that's something that I'd like to know if we're really looking at that or have the capacity to.
Yep, so food waste, we have done lots of stuff at this committee leading up to the to the contract with Serco and the tender. Because we incinerate and we've got weekly collections, it just, that for all manner of reasons, it just wasn't right for this authority for the food waste, and the cost was also prohibitive. If we were going to look at maybe alternate weekly collections, which I dread to talk about because I know we've made a decision on that, but it does change it if you've got, you know, lots of authorities that take food waste are on different collections, and there is, and I think you said there's no market for that, but we know there's markets out there. But part of this government strategy or that's come out, that does deal with food waste. So the government are looking at, do they force authorities to do food waste? And obviously if they do that, then we would have to reconsider our collection and have to consider it in much more detail. And again, it does come back to the money side of it. We did cost it all up. It was brought to this committee, it was taken to a map, and the costs are huge. So, but I'm not for 1 minute saying we won't move to that in the future. I'm not saying we will, but we have to continue to monitor it and look at it and consider it. We're just not ruling anything in or out at this stage.
Councillor George, and I haven't got seen any. If anybody else is trying to get back, I haven't seen your hand, so you need to wait.
Thank you. Looking for positive messages here. Obviously, the garden waste campaign is going very well. Can I ask, in terms of positive messages, is all that waste being composted and the composted, recycled, and used? And is this a positive message we can put out on new development? And has that been done? And have we supported you to do that actually?
So on all of our garden waste advertising, we say what happens to garden waste, and it's composted into a soil conditioner called ProGrow, which is to an organic standard, and you can buy it at the HWRCs, and often councils use it on their own flower beds and things like that. So yeah, if you want to buy back your own garden waste, then you can. But yeah, it is all composted into an organic soil conditioner.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you very much for coming. Hope our Serco visitors enjoyed the experience of being here, and welcome to Maria. We've had Sarah several times, but it's nice to have you join us, and you've certainly been made to work hard tonight, so thank you very much. And John, as ever, thank you. And Councillor Eachus and Rebecca, who I didn't really welcome you back, but anyway, it's nice to have you back in committee as well. We still have to do the work programme, and I've had a communication about the point that Councillor Westbrook raised, so I need to read the communication before I see what happens next.
This one's Councillor Barnes, and then I'll show you Councillor.
Right, okay, so the message from the portfolio holder who was there says he's spoken to Councillor Mark Westbrook, and they agree that the best way would be a task and finish group to work with him and officers. So if that's, do come forward if you want to just comment. If the answer is a task and finish group, then I suggest it probably won't have finished in time for the June meeting, and that needs to be timetabled rather than in June. But as you're here, just briefly.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's just I think Councillor Harvey did send an email to Democrats, so I think he must have got lost in the ether somewhere. Yeah, she's got it now. So
reached an answer. I don't need to read the.
No. The other thing was there was some nominated members from our group, which was Councillor Janet Westbrook, Councillor Colin Regan, and Councillor Gary Watts, I believe, in the original email. You've got.
Okay.
Okay, that was it.
Thank you. Yeah, no. So we'll. If everybody's happy with that, we'll set up a task and finish group, and I'll get and Ellie will circulate the other groups to get representatives. So in terms of the work programme, next meeting on 13th of March, we have an update on homelessness, on the aspects that this committee was interested in, which was the mental health aspects. So they'll be coming, and we also have yet another evening on air quality. So that's been, again, something we've asked to come back here. And the CCG scoping group have promised us an update.
Chair, that meeting has not yet been called by Democratic Services, and I am waiting on their moving that forward.
Democratic Services say a meeting's been scheduled for February, so you're probably about to be told the actual day. But
No, that's great. That's great. It isn't in my diary, that's all.
Yes.
My name's gone forward for that, but if it hasn't, could I put my name for that scoping group?
Which one? Sorry.
The CCG thing.
One's already met once, but if
I'm quite happy if others wish to join. I'm just, I've just been pointed out that the meeting has only just been arranged today, 30th of the 1st. Is that correct? No, I'm just saying it because it says on the worksheet at the back.
anyway,
My apologies.
I
It doesn't
think
matter. Anyway, we will be there. Fine.
we'll leave you in for March. If you have your meeting in February and you can tell us what came out of it, but if it needs to be deferred, it can be. So that's March. Then June, we will have the update on modern slavery. It was, I was reminded, I think, at the last meeting that I needed to chase up when we could timetable that. So that can come in June. Neighbourhood management was originally down for tonight, but something got lost in the system and the officers didn't know in time that they had to write a report. And March looks pretty full, so I think that should come, because nothing urgent in that. That can come in June. And probably we won't be back to CSPOs for just, so we'll leave the CSPOs as to be timetabled once the task and finish is tasked and finished. And it's suggested that we might like to pencil in at this stage, because we asked for it, a review of B-Love for this year. So rather than wait till December, that's been penciled in for October. Now I think that covers, and then there's just two things at the end. There's a few things at the end to be timetabled. Update on the ice rink, funding and management of borough land for biodiversity. Have we heard back from officers as to when we could have either of those? Okay, we can chase that up, because if we aren't going to be doing CSPOs in June, one of those can be chased up for June. And then review of youth services and road safety around schools. Are we waiting for forms? Yeah. We need waiting for the work programme forms for those, okay? Councillor Kintelli, you look like you were trying to say something.
Thank you, Chair. It was just really on the update on the ice rink. I wanted to check you weren't waiting for a form, because that was an update that was promised to us when we had the original report. And I personally receive representations regularly from residents who, you know, for them this is a long period of time. It might not be for us as an administration, but they consider it to be a long period of time not to have had an update, and certainly very keen to know about temporary ice rinks and all that sort of thing. So if we can push that along, I'd be really grateful.
So if we're all agreed, we will ask Democratic Services to follow up both those two, the funding of management of borough land, updating the ice rink, and get at least get one of them on in June, with the ice rink having the priority. But if that can't, go do the other one. And then whoever mentioned road safety around schools and review youth services, please let us have the work programme suggestion forms. And that, I think, is it, everybody. And the meeting's closed at 22 minutes past 8. Thank you very much for all your participation.